A typo in an email is embarrassing. A typo in a tweet, that can get you ratioed into next week. But what if a typo could rewrite the Bible, crash a multi-million-dollar spacecraft, or even create a word that never should have existed? We love to credit history's big moments to kings, inventors, and generals. But the truth is, some of the most profound changes in our world were set in motion by a single misplaced letter. We're about to show you how the tiniest errors have had the biggest consequences, proving that history isn't always written by the victors. Sometimes it's written by the careless. You've done it. I've done it. We've all sent a text with a glaring autocorrect fail or a professional email with a mortifying spelling mistake. Usually the stakes are low, a little confusion, maybe some awkward laughter, and life moves on. But our world is literally built on text. Our laws, our science, our beliefs, and our entire digital world are all constructed from letters and symbols. And when just one of those foundational characters is wrong, the whole structure can start to wobble. This isn't just about funny mistakes, this is about how a single keystroke, a misplaced piece of metal type, or a hastily scribbled symbol can ripple across centuries. We're going to explore the simple errors that ended up rewriting religion, costing fortunes and altering history forever. From sacred text to rocket science, these are the typos that had shocking, world-changing impacts. Number 1. Errors of faith and nation. Let's start with typos that struck at the very heart of belief and national identity. These weren't just ink on paper, they were mistakes etched into the documents and monuments meant to define a people, proving that human error can sneak into even our most sacred spaces. First up is almost certainly the most scandalous typo in history, the Wicked Bible. In 1631, the King's printers in London, Robert Barker and Martin Lucas, were given the prestigious job of printing a new edition of the King James Bible. This was the authorized word of God for the entire kingdom. They set out to print 1,000 copies. But somewhere in the painstaking process of setting thousands of tiny metal letters by hand, a catastrophic error was made. The mistake was in one of the most important passages of the entire book, the 10 Commandments. The 7th commandment from the book of Exodus should read, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." But in Barker and Lucas's new edition, 3 crucial letters were missing. N-O-T. Their Bible actively commanded, "Thou shalt commit adultery." It took a full year for anyone to spot the error, but when they did, the reaction was furious. King Charles I was outraged. Barker and Lucas were dragged before the court, stripped of their printing license, and hit with a massive fine, reported to be around £300, a truly ruinous sum at the time. The king ordered every single copy of the Wicked Bible, as it was now called, to be found and burned. Today, only a handful are thought to survive, maybe 10 to 20 in total, making them incredibly rare and valuable collector's items. While some have speculated it was sabotage by a rival printer, it was most likely just a disastrous case of sloppy proofreading. Either way, the Wicked Bible is the ultimate example of how a tiny omission can completely and heretically reverse a sacred text. From a holy book to a national monument, our next typo is literally set in stone. If you visit the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., you'll find 2 of Abraham Lincoln's most famous speeches carved into the massive limestone walls. On the north wall is his second inaugural address, a profound reflection on the Civil War. The words are carved with a solemn grandeur, but if you look very closely, you might spot something odd. In the line expressing high hope for the future, the word future looks a little strange. The bottom horizontal line of the F seems filled in. That's because the engraver made a permanent mistake, accidentally carving the word as future. The error was apparently caught not long after it was made. An artist was brought in to carefully fill in part of the E to transform it into an F. But limestone isn't a word processor. Even after the fix, a faint ghost of the original mistake remains visible to keen-eyed visitors today. A subtle but permanent reminder of human fallibility on a monument dedicated to one of history's greatest figures. Number 2, the high-stakes glitches. Now we move from the sacred to the scientific, where the consequences are measured in millions of dollars and catastrophic failure. These are the typos of the modern age, glitches in the complex language of code where one wrong character can bring a powerful system to its knees. Our first case takes us to the dawn of the space race. On July 22, 1962, NASA launched the Mariner 1 probe, its very first attempt to fly by the planet Venus. The rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral, carrying the hopes of a nation. But just 293 seconds into the flight, it started veering dangerously off course. To prevent it from crashing into a populated area, the range safety officer had to make a gut-wrenching call. He pushed the button to destroy it. A mission costing $18.5 million was over in less than 5 minutes. The investigation traced the failure back to the guidance software. The popular story, made famous by author Arthur C. Clarke, is that the disaster was caused by the most expensive hyphen in history. The reality, according to NASA, is a bit more complex, but no less astounding. The error wasn't a hyphen, but the omission of an overbar, a straight line above an R in the handwritten guidance equations. That tiny overbar was meant to tell the guidance computer to smooth the velocity data it was receiving, essentially averaging it out to ignore minor blips. Without that smoothing function, the software interpreted every tiny, normal fluctuation as a major crisis, issuing a frantic stream of unnecessary course corrections. This caused the rocket to lurch erratically, and the mission was lost. The core truth remains. The absence of a single typographical symbol in a mathematical formula was a key factor in the destruction of a multi-million-dollar spacecraft. Nearly 3 decades later, another typo showed just how fragile our connected world was becoming. On January 15, 1990, the AT&T long-distance network in the United States suddenly suffered a massive failure. For 9 agonizing hours, chaos rippled across the country as an estimated 75 million phone calls failed to connect. Businesses were paralyzed and millions of people were cut off. The cause wasn't a cut cable or a natural disaster. It was a single, tiny error in a line of code. A recent software update sent to the network's 114 main switching stations had a subtle flaw. Popular retellings often blame a single misplaced break statement, but the real bug was a more complex timing issue. When a switch would restart, it would send a status message to its neighbors. Due to the bug, a certain sequence of these messages could confuse the receiving switch, causing it to crash. That switch would then restart, sending out the same faulty signal, triggering a chain reaction. The network's own recovery system became the very thing that spread the failure nationwide. It was a stark lesson in how one microscopic coding error could cause a technological meltdown. Our final high-stakes mistake is less of a catastrophe and more of a national facepalm. In 2008, the Casa de Moneda, Chile's national mint, began producing a new batch of 50 peso coins. It wasn't until late 2009 that people started noticing something was very, very wrong. On the coin, where the country's name was proudly displayed, it didn't say Chile. It read Chaye. An unknown number of coins bearing the misspelling of the nation's own name had been released into circulation. Once the news broke, it became a national scandal. The general manager of the mint was fired, along with other staff members. But as is so often the case with errors like this, the flawed coins were quickly hoarded by the public and became instant collector's items. Today, the Chi'e coin is a sought-after novelty, a small metallic reminder that even a nation's official currency isn't immune to a baffling typo. It's astonishing how much chaos can spring from one wrong character. These stories show that whether it's code, currency, or commandments, the details matter. If you're finding these historical blunders as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We dive into the weird and unbelievable corners of history every week, and you won't want to miss what's next. Number 3, typographical tall tales. Not every famous typo is a well-documented disaster. Some of the most enduring stories are more like legends, passed around so many times their origins have become murky. Let's do a little myth-busting. You may have heard this one. It's a classic of marketing disaster folklore. A small travel agency placed an ad in the Yellow Pages to highlight their expertise in exotic travel. But when the phone book came out, a single letter typo had changed everything. The X had been replaced with an R. The ad now proudly offered erotic travel. As the story goes, the agency was flooded with calls from customers looking for a very different kind of vacation. Its business was ruined, and a massive lawsuit followed. It's the perfect cautionary tale, and maybe a little too perfect. While the story is repeated endlessly, finding any primary evidence of the lawsuit or the agency's demise is next to impossible. It's most likely an urban legend about the immense power packed into a single letter. Next, a typo that created one of the biggest nutrition myths of the 20th century. One many of us grew up believing thanks to Popeye. The myth? That spinach has an almost magical amount of iron. The story claims that in 1870, a German chemist misplaced a decimal point, recording the iron content of spinach as 35 milligrams per serving instead of the actual 3.5. This tenfold exaggeration was supposedly published, and the legend of spinach as a superfood was born. When Popeye the Sailor debuted in 1929, his spinach-fueled strength cemented the idea in popular culture, and he's often credited with boosting spinach consumption in the US by a third. But here's the twist. The story of the typo is itself a myth. Modern researchers who have dug into this claim have found no evidence of this decimal point error in 19th century scientific literature. The overestimation was more likely due to confusion between dried and fresh spinach measurements. So we have a myth about a typo which fueled a myth about a vegetable, which was then popularized by a cartoon. Our final typographical tale is about the origin of one of the most valuable brand names in history, Google. The name is so ubiquitous it's a verb in the dictionary. But according to a popular origin story, the name itself was a typo. The story goes that in 1997, Stanford students Larry Page and Sergey Brin were brainstorming a new name for their search engine, which they've been calling Backrub. They settled on Google, the mathematical term for the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. A fellow student, Sean Anderson, went to check if the domain name google.com was available, but he supposedly misspelled it, typing google.com instead. Page liked the accidental spelling and registered it on the spot. It's a fantastic story, but it might be just that. A story. Official accounts from Google have been inconsistent, and some suggest Google was a deliberate, playful variation on Google. Whether it was a genuine typo or clever branding, the story has become part of Silicon Valley lore. Number 4. The word that never was most typos, just change existing words. But in one bizarre case, a typo actually created a word out of thin air. This is the strange story of dawd. A ghost word that appeared in the dictionary, was given a definition and looked completely real but had never actually been used by anyone. The word dawd appeared on page 771 of the prestigious Webster's New International Dictionary, 2nd edition, in 1934. It sat innocently between dorcopsis, a kangaroo, and dore, golden-coloured. The definition was brief, a noun meaning density. For 5 years, dawd lived its quiet, imaginary life until 1939, when an editor noticed something was off. The word had no etymology, no origin story, which is a huge red flag for dictionary editors. An investigation was launched. It all started with a submission slip from a consultant, meant to add density as another meaning for the abbreviation D or D. On the slip, the phrase was written as D or D. However, someone in the editorial chain misread the spaced-out letters as a single word, D-O-R-D. A new slip was created for the word dawd. It was given a part of speech and a pronunciation, and it passed through multiple layers of proofreading without anyone catching the mistake. After the ghost was discovered, a note was made to remove it, but for some reason the correction wasn't actually made until 1947. Dawd haunted the dictionary for 13 years before it was finally exorcised, leaving us with a classic story of how a phantom can be born from a simple misreading of text. Conclusion. So what have we learned? We've seen a holy book command sin, a spaceship explode from a missing line, and a national network crash from a bit of bad code. We've seen myths born from fictional science and a ghost word materialize in the dictionary. Each story is a testament to the invisible power of the written word. History, it turns out, is not just a grand story of battles and breakthroughs. It's also a messy, human story full of small errors that sometimes spiral into world-changing consequences. These typos reveal the hidden fragility in our most robust systems, our language, our technology, and our beliefs. They remind us that for all our planning, a single slip of the pen, the press or the keyboard can still manage to rewrite the world. So next time you spot a typo, maybe give it a second thought. It's probably just a mistake, but you never know. It could be history in the making. What's the most consequential typo you've ever seen? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird footnotes of history. We'll see you next time.